In the days when judges ruled over Israel, there was a time of famine in the land of Bethlehem. A man named Elimelech, along with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, made the difficult decision to leave their homeland and travel to the country of Moab in search of food and survival. They settled there among a foreign people, hoping the famine would pass and they could return home. While living in Moab, Elimelech died, leaving Naomi alone with her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. In time, her sons married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. For about 10 years, they lived together as a family in Moab, and Naomi grew to love her daughters-in-law as if they were her own daughters. But then tragedy struck again. Both of Naomi's sons died, leaving 3 widows with no husbands, no sons, and no security in an ancient world where women depended on men for protection and provision. Naomi's heart was broken, and she felt utterly alone in a foreign land, far from the God she had known in her youth. When Naomi heard that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by providing food once again, she decided to return to her homeland of Bethlehem. She prepared to leave Moab, and her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, began to travel with her on the road back to Judah. But as they walked, Naomi's heart grew heavy, thinking about the difficult future these young women would face if they stayed with her. She stopped on the road and turned to them with tears in her eyes, saying, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." She kissed them goodbye, and all 3 women wept aloud together. Orpah and Ruth protested, saying they wanted to go with Naomi to her people. But Naomi insisted there was no future for them with her. She had no more sons for them to marry, no hope to offer them, and she believed that the hand of the Lord had turned against her. Finally, Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and returned to her people. But Ruth clung to Naomi and refused to leave her side. When Naomi urged Ruth once more to follow her sister-in-law back to Moab, Ruth spoke words that would echo through the ages, words of loyalty and devotion so beautiful and profound that they are still quoted at weddings and celebrations of love today. Ruth said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go I will go, and where you stay I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." These words came from the deepest place in Ruth's heart, a place of unshakable loyalty, sacrificial love, and profound faith. Ruth was choosing to leave everything familiar, her homeland, her family, her gods, her culture, her language, to follow Naomi into an unknown future among a people who might reject her as a foreigner. She was choosing to embrace the God of Israel, even though she had only known him through Naomi's life. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her to return, and the 2 women continued on their journey together. So, Naomi and Ruth traveled together until they arrived in Bethlehem, just as the barley harvest was beginning. The whole town was stirred by their arrival, and the women of Bethlehem asked, "Can this be Naomi?" For she had left full, with a husband and 2 sons, but now she returned empty, broken by loss and grief. Naomi told them, "Don't call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, which means bitter, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." Naomi could only see her losses, her husband, her sons, her security, her joy. She felt forgotten by God, abandoned and alone, despite Ruth's faithful presence beside her. But what Naomi couldn't see in her grief was that God had not abandoned her at all. He had given her Ruth, a daughter-in-law whose love and loyalty would prove more valuable than 7 sons. And God was already working behind the scenes, preparing a beautiful story of redemption that would not only restore Naomi's joy, but would also place Ruth in the lineage of the Messiah himself. The darkest moments of their story were about to give way to the most beautiful dawn. Ruth and Naomi settled into life in Bethlehem, but they had no means of support and no food to eat. In those days, according to God's law, the poor and the foreigners were allowed to follow behind the harvesters in the fields and gather the leftover grain that the reapers missed. This was called gleaning, and it was back-breaking work that provided just enough to survive. Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi agreed, and Ruth went out to glean in the fields. Now as it happened, or rather as God in his providence arranged, Ruth found herself gleaning in a field belonging to a man named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech. Boaz was a man of standing and character, wealthy and respected in the community. When he arrived at his fields that morning and saw Ruth working among the harvesters, he asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman?" The foreman replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She asked permission to glean and has been working steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." Boaz was immediately drawn to Ruth, impressed by what he had heard about her loyalty to Naomi and her willingness to work hard in a foreign land. He approached Ruth gently and spoke to her with kindness and respect. "My daughter, listen to me," he said. "Don't go and glean in another field and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." Ruth was overwhelmed by his kindness. She bowed down with her face to the ground and asked, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother in your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Boaz then invited Ruth to eat with his workers and instructed his men to deliberately pull out extra stalks of grain for her to find. That evening, Ruth returned to Naomi carrying an abundant amount of barley, far more than any gleaner could normally gather in a day. When Naomi saw how much Ruth had brought home, she was amazed and asked, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Ruth told her mother-in-law about the field owner who had shown her such extraordinary kindness, and when she mentioned his name was Boaz, Naomi's eyes lit up with recognition and hope. "The Lord bless him," Naomi exclaimed. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." In ancient Israel, the guardian redeemer, or kinsman redeemer, had the responsibility to help family members in need, to buy back land that had been sold due to poverty, to marry a widow to preserve the family line, and to protect vulnerable relatives. Suddenly, Naomi saw a glimmer of hope, where before there had been only bitterness. God was providing not just daily bread, but perhaps a future, a restoration, a redemption beyond anything she had dared to imagine. Ruth continued to glean in Boaz's fields throughout the barley and wheat harvests, living with Naomi and watching as this good man continued to show them both extraordinary favor and protection. When the harvest season ended, Naomi decided it was time to take action to secure Ruth's future. She instructed Ruth to wash and perfume herself, put on her best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor where Boaz would be winnowing barley that evening. Naomi told Ruth to wait until Boaz had finished eating and drinking and had lain down for the night, then to quietly uncover his feet and lie down there. This was a symbolic act in their culture, a way for Ruth to formally ask Boaz to fulfill his role as kinsman redeemer by marrying her and redeeming Elimelech's family line. Ruth did exactly as Naomi instructed. In the middle of the night, Boaz awoke startled to find someone lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. Ruth answered, "I am your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." This was Ruth's humble proposal, asking Boaz to take her under his protection through marriage. Boaz was deeply moved by Ruth's request. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he said. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask." However, Boaz explained that there was one complication. There was another relative who was more closely related to Elimelech than Boaz was. and by law, that man had the first right to redeem the land and marry Ruth. Boaz was an honorable man who would not circumvent the proper legal process, even though his heart clearly desired to marry Ruth himself. He told Ruth to stay until morning, and at daybreak, before anyone could see her, she returned to Naomi with 6 measures of barley that Boaz had given her. When Ruth told Naomi everything that had happened, Naomi said with confidence, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." True to his word, Boaz went to the town gate where legal matters were settled. When the closer relative arrived, Boaz explained the situation in the presence of 10 elders as witnesses. He told the man that Naomi was selling the piece of land that belonged to Elimelech, and that the relative had the first right to redeem it. The man agreed, until Boaz added, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." At this, the relative backed away, saying he couldn't redeem it because it might endanger his own estate. And so Boaz publicly declared before the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown." The people at the gate and the elders responded, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel." So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him, and the women said, "Naomi has a son." They named him Obed, and he became the father of Jesse, who became the father of David, the great king of Israel. And from David's line would eventually come Jesus, the ultimate redeemer. As you rest tonight, remember Ruth's story of loyalty, faith, and redemption. Remember that your losses and struggles are not the end of your story. God can redeem your bitterest moments and write them into a beautiful narrative of hope. Rest now in the peace of knowing that faithfulness is never wasted, and that God sees every act of love and loyalty. Sleep well, dear friend, and may you wake to your own story of redemption.